everybody for coming out. This presentation of the 2024 budget and then the subsequent hearing is brought to you today to show you information on the current finances of the village and also to ask for your input on this year's budget. After the presentation, the public will be allowed to ask questions and make presentations. All people participating who believe that their interest in property is affected by the proposed budget shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard by the group. Any questions or concerns by those viewing online must be typed in on the Facebook Live site, beginning with the first and last names of the person making the submission. Then you may give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposed budget. For those watching online, I encourage you to submit your online questions and comments right away, as there's a couple-minute delay in the live stream and we don't want to miss any of your questions. And we'll take the questions from people online after we finished taking all the questions from people in person. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Christina to go through the presentation for everyone.
Okay. Thank you so much, Damien. Just 1 second. I will move on this side. Can anyone hear me? Okay. Okay. Okay, no, I think it's fine. Okay.
Sorry.
That.
I'm sorry.
I cannot do the Steve Jobs thingy. Okay. Test, test, test. Oh my God. Hello? All right. That's going to be weird to speak this close to my mouth. Anyways. So, this is 2024, and this is the budget and the tax rates presentation. And it should have been April 24. Damien, are you sure that we have the right presentation? Okay, so we'll see it once we start the presentation if we are on the right page. So when talking about budget and tax notices, you will all receive a tax notice, and just want to highlight that not all the taxes that you pay, not every levy is staying in the municipality. Our portion of levy is pretty much the municipal, residential or business, or pretty much the municipal levy, and the sewer frontage and the water frontages that are mainly for creating reserves and help us with operating the utilities, the sewer and the water. All the other levies are levies that are imposed on to us by other authorities like school, policing, the BC assessment, hospital, TNRD, and so on. So property taxes comprise of municipal levy, the school, policing levy, TNRD, hospital, BCAA, MFA, and then we have the frontages. This is just a summary of what I stated before, but I just wanted to show you how on the tax notices they are going to be presented. Taxes payable consist of tax rates, and that is per assessed value, per $1,000 of assessed value. Now the assessed value is being determined by BC Assessment Authority, and it's outside our control. So the assessed value is determined, as I said, by BCAA, and this year it increased approximately 3.5 on average for the village of Cache Creek from last year, of course. And the tax rates, on the other hand, are determined internally, and that in order to generate a balanced budget that we are required by the community charter to create. And now I'm going to discuss a bit the economic conditions because we don't operate in isolation. We are very tied into Canadian economies, and as you know, a few years back we had COVID, we had lockdowns, there was a lot of demand and hardly any supply. I think right now we are on the other page of the economical situation where we have a lot of supply. No, we have a lot of demand, for example, for labor, but hardly we can hire people to fill in those positions. So, and globally we all know that what's happening out there, there are lots of wars, and then for the supply, like for almost anything, many items are coming from import, and you know, the supply chain has been disrupted by wars and so on. So we are all dependent on those conditions. Productivity and unemployment rate, I spoke about that, and the fact that we have hard time finding labor. Like, for example, Jessica back there knows that in Ashcroft for the pool, hardly able to fill in the lifeguards positions. The inflation rates now finally stabilized a bit, so we are doing much better economically in Canada than during COVID. Interest rates, we see now that they start getting a bit lower, so the return on our investment is going to be reflected by this decrease in interest rates and exchange rates, and then there is the consumer spending. Again, the supply chain issues, it's not just us having problems with the shortage of labor. All our suppliers face the same issue, and therefore it translates in how we get our supplies and everything else. Or how we get the contractors and everything, how it's aligned. So it's a logistical issue, but we are trying to work everything out. The inflation rate at the end of February was listed at 2.8%, so we're finally getting into a more stable economical position in Canada, so we are happy about that. But other constraints would be that utility prices went up about 9% from 2023. The insurance went up 23%, and that's mostly because we had the floods and we had lots of... and I don't think we are on the right presentation. I think this is the one that I wanted to present last council meeting. I think you have to go back and give me the right presentation. No, because we went through. Sorry about that. Can I just go through? Just sorry for a second, because it should be February, April. Oh, this is the one? This is where I am? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry about that. We are on the right place. All right. So, insurance went up about 23%, and that's mostly because we had the floods last year, and we had the response and the recovery at the fire hall, and therefore the insurance would have gone up anyway. So worker compensation is up 12%. The fuel went up mostly because of the carbon tax increases. We all know that as of April 1st. Again, situation is finding supplies. Sometimes when we intend to buy inventory to change, let's say, a pump or something, it takes a long time until we receive that pump, so there is a time lag between when we place an order or when we receive the supplies, so we have to work with that. And one of the major constraints that we have is the age infrastructure and all the unexpected breakdowns in our infrastructure. Other uncertainties like the environment, is the floods and the wildfire. For example, last year we had the freshet that hit the village costed us about $800,000. It was recoverable, I would say about 90%, but about 10% was ineligible because of the situation. Also, the recovery projects are approximately 5.5 million, of which the village is responsible for about 250,000 in 2024 and about 400,000 in 2025. So those are amounts that we will have to find a way to cover for. Water consumption went up about 15% from 2022 to 2023. I didn't get all the information to see, well, I don't have 2024 to make a comparison, but it went up. And what I want to highlight is that, for example, Robin, our water staff, went to check she went in 100 Mile House to see how their water treatment works. And she found out that to a population of 2,000 people and the hospital, they use less than half that we use in Cache Creek. So that's a tremendous amount of treatment that we have to apply, and of course the costs are driven up because of that. And of course this is the freshet that we had last year, and I wanted to highlight that we still have to work on recovery, and that's going to be quite a few years. Well, I'm not quite sure, and for budgeting purposes, it's really hard to figure out when a project is going to be approved, and the logistics and the timeline. So I made a few assumptions. But basically, these are all freshet-related projects that we have. And in the handouts, you are going to have all these projects. So I just want to go through this spreadsheet so you understand what the thought process was. So the majority of these projects are being covered by DFA, Disaster Financial Assistance. Sorry about that. And they approve us or they deny us project. We have a few projects that have not been approved because they consider that those should have been mostly maintenance rather than, freshet driven, and so on. But we have a few projects that we completed, like the water main, and that was a major project and a high priority because a quarter of the town didn't have water for so long. Actually, they did have water, but they had through a single line and they didn't have much pressure and so on. And so this had been completed in 2023, but some projects are just started to be worked on in 2024, and we estimate that we are going to have this claim that this is the maximum. For example, this project, which is which one is Todd Road Bridge, let's go there. We were approved on $137,000 to fix the bridge. It's a work in progress. The claim in 2024 is going to be about 133, from which DFA is going to reimburse us 120, but the 13,000 is going to be the village responsibility to cover for. And so the projects that we are still pending, I assume that we eventually are going to get approved, and I move them into the future as being completed. Now, if they are going to be fulfilled in 2025, I don't know. It may be a percentage work done in 25 and then the rest move in 2026, but I made the assumption that if it is approved, then we are going to fulfill the project in the next year, just for budgeting purposes. And so these are all projects related to the freshet, and hopefully we are going to be in a much better position once we fill this out. Another assumption that I had to make was related to the season, the wildfire season that is approaching. Now, fingers crossed, we are not going to have any problems, but all the weather channels and everyone is forecasting for a major event because of the droughts, lack of rain, and so on. So I had to budget a bit more conservatively to make sure that our budget is balanced. I want to touch a bit about community weakness, and we all know that we have a small tax base, we have outdated infrastructure, we've relied a lot on external sources of revenue that we are trying to overcome, and we have a lack of business and industrial diversity, and the council is engaging into a mill rate rebalancing in order to attract more industrial outfits. But that's also an opportunity for us because the residential development can expand our tax base, and then there are business opportunities in downtown core. There is the undeveloped industrial zone just by Campbell Hill, and then there are commercial properties held vacant that could be developed in the future to increase the tax base. Moving further, when budgeting and for accounting purposes, we use the fund accounting, and that is using the general operation and water sewer operation, discerning between those operations and reserves. Other municipalities, they probably have a transit operation separated from the general operation, but in our case, we have this minimum requirement, and the waste collection is incorporated in the general operations. The general fund comprises of administration, the public works, this is the garbage, the waste collection, street, roads, transportation, emergency operations, recreation and protective services. This is the fire department, and the emergency operation, these are the responses and the recovery for floods and fire. Water fund, on the other hand, is focusing on the delivery, the pump houses, reservoirs, well, and the treatment of the water for the village to have drinkable water. Sewer, on the other hand, is collection and pipes, the treatment plant, the disposal of organic material, treatment, and the lift stations. Now, going further to reserves, or known as restricted assets, we have statutory reserves, which is the perpetual care fund that we are obligated to hold. The restricted reserves that we receive from the government, and we have to use those funds for specific projects, and the non-restricted fund, which is in our case the landfill legacy reserve. There are some local government funds, reserves, that the council sets them aside by bylaw, and they are all in these three categories here. Okay, so now I would like to speak about the financial position as a historical perspective, just to kind of put in a perspective our future. We have to look back and see what happened in the community. Again, the revenues are made of municipal taxation, the sales of services like the business licenses and dog licenses and many other things. Oh, yeah, so licenses and permits and penalties, and external sources, which is the landfill royalty, and governmental grants. In the past, this is our performance, and for revenue, I only have chosen 3 years because, like, the trend is pretty set. Now, we have the general, and this is pretty much the inflationary increase. And the same is for the water and sewer. The landfill is kind of coming a bit up, so we are getting on the right track. But what is interesting to see is this green column, which is other revenues from own sources. Now, in 2023, we had the floods and we had a lot of work. We also had quite a few projects that we had to delay because we couldn't attend to those projects because of the response and recovery. So funds from government were put into investments, and this is the return on investments, the interest from the banks. And in 2023, the return was pretty good, and so we had a pretty good, I'd say, decent return on the investment. So we are very happy that we were able to increase that investment. About the percentages of revenue by different sources, we all see that, for example, this is the pie, and so we have the real taxes, the real property taxes, 38%, so it increased 38% from 16% out of the entire revenue source, and so on. And we can see that the revenue, the pie, the slice from the crown lease and the royalties from the landfill has increased from 22% to 28% in 2023. For the expenditures, we have protective services, park and recreation, transportation, this is the public works pretty much, water and sewer operations, and then we have the capital projects. And this is about our performance, and I went back from 2015 just to kind of see a trend and show people a trend that we had. So this is the general operation. We have the sewer and we have the water. And if you can see that the sewer water is pretty constant. We had a few glitches here and there, and this year, in 2023, the pump, the belt press failed, so we can see an increase in the cost because of that, because we have to outsource that part of the operation. But here we can see in general operation, these big spikes are due to floods. So we can see that it affected the general operation of the village a great deal. But if we look in 2021 and 2022, the general operation is actually lower than in previous years. So I think we, between Damien and myself, are doing a pretty good damn job. Just to be proud of myself. Okay, and again, here is the percentage distribution of the pie. The reason I selected this pie and I isolated it, and the fact that there is no corresponding color here, is because in 2022 we didn't have any flood. 2021 we didn't have any flood or emergency responses and expenditures, or hardly any. But in 2023, 31% of the expenditures were related to floods. So this is a big chunk of money that we had to outlay to respond to the floods. The water operations. We are doing much better. We went from being highly subsidized by the municipal operations, municipal revenue, and being self-sufficient out of water user fees and the frontages. Now, the frontages, and here we can see that the revenues are in much better shape. These were set by the council into reserve because we had several project applications that we submitted, and we only can qualify for certain projects if we have reserves set aside. So the council decided to start increasing those frontages in order to set revenues aside so the village can qualify for more projects in the future. And the same thing is for the sewer. The sewer is still, the operations is, we are not self-sufficient, but this year we can see this big spike, and this is the belt press that failed. Otherwise, we would have been on a good trend of being self-sufficient in that department and maybe setting aside some funds for the revenue, for the reserves. Now, 2024-2028 financial plan. We are required to present a balanced budget by the community charter, and we have to prepare it every year. And I submitted, I included the bylaw, which is not adopted yet, but I included it in the pamphlets that I sent out. And this is the revenue side over the year, 2024 to 2028. Just to show the trend, the trends are again similar to what we had up to 2023, where the sewer water revenues are here, and unfortunately for 2024, I cannot predict how much return on investment we are going to generate. I can only predict that much, so that's why we can see this big difference here. So hopefully by the end of the year we are going to be in much better shape, but I cannot estimate that amount. For the expenditures, this would be the expenditure, and we are going to see that we have a big amount here, and those are the capital projects. And the capital projects stem from the recovery from the floods from 2023 that I presented earlier, and from our other projects that we do normally in the course of the activity. And here is all the grants that we have in work. So work in progress, approved but we didn't start the project, approved not start the work yet. So we are fairly busy with the projects that we have and the grants that we applied for. So we have a long work ahead of us. So $4 million of Cache Creek projects, and this is the regular projects, not the other ones, the freshet, not the freshet. Yeah, so I estimated that for our regular projects in 2023, we are going to work on about this amount, and we are going to get this many grants back in claims, and this would be our portion to cover for. Yeah, so here is again the general. This is the flood year. This was the flood year. Hopefully this year we are going to get a bit normalized, but again we have projects and work to do, and also the inflation and all the other increases that I presented as constraints to our budget. I'll go back to say that tax rate is the tax is payable, the levies are the tax rate multiplied by every $1,000 of assessed value, and oops, I went a bit too far. The tax rates or the mill rates are adopted by the council to generate a balanced budget to comply with the community charter, and the fact that excuse me, the council has engaged into a balancing of the tax rates between classes in order to make it fairer, because the residential, like the assessment of the residential units are 79% of the burden of assessment, yet the levies are 56.61, whereas, for example, the light industry, the burden of assessment is only 0.3%, not even 1%, not even 0.5%, but they cover 4% of the entire municipal revenue. And they went down from 20, actually at one point they were 25% of the entire municipal revenue was generated by the light industry. So if the village wants to attract more industry, we have to balance the light industrial levy so they can come on board. And these are the proposed mill rates and the increase. Now the increase for residential is at 5.53%. The assessment of residential was 1 point something, so the aggregate increase is 7% for 2024. And yeah, these are the mill rates. Now, what I want to highlight is the importance of a balanced budget, because if we don't pay what we spend in that year, then we end up paying in the future, and the interest of whatever we didn't pay is in the inflation. So we have to be self-sufficient. And now I'm going to move back to Damien to go to the question period.
Test, test. There we go. That one works. There we go. So, thank you, Christina, for that. So the next portion is a public hearing, and the main function of today is to hear what the public has to say about the budget. The main function of staff in this evening is to listen to the views of the public. We're not here to debate the merits of the budget as it is. That's for council, but we want to hear from you, and then we take the information and present it to council. For tonight, everyone's going to be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard. No one will be or should be discouraged or prevented from making their views heard. But to maintain order in this meeting and ensure everyone has a reasonable chance to be heard, I have a few rules of procedure for everyone to follow tonight. First one being, tonight we're only here to talk about the budget. I know there's probably numerous things that people want to talk about and discuss. And with it being budget, that can encapsulate a lot of things and a lot of questions, like how's this impacted by the budget, that sort of thing. But the goal is to talk about the numbers today. If you have a complaint about the street, I'm sorry, tonight's not the forum for that. Each speaker will be permitted to address the hearing twice. Initial presentations won't be limited, providing that the comments stay relevant to the issues at hand, and that it's not obstructing the hearing itself. After everyone that wants to speak has had the opportunity to do so, then a second opportunity will be given to the person. We're going to have people come up to the microphone because it's hard to tell because she's behind the screen, but Jessica from the Hub's here broadcasting online tonight. And so we want to make sure that our friends online that are watching there are able to hear what everyone's saying here. So make sure you come up to the microphone. If there's multiple people, I encourage you to form a line. And then after you've spoken, if you have a subsequent question, if you go back to the back of the line, that would suffice to be in the proper turn order. If further hearings are required because we don't get the chance to talk to everyone, if we end up with a lineup out the door, we'll sort out how to have future hearings to make sure that everybody gets the chance to be heard. And And we ask that when you begin your presentation, you state your first and last name for the record, and then we'll keep your name in the your name and comments in the official record of this meeting and any subsequent meetings that we have to provide this record. If you have any issues with the way that the meeting is being conducted, please direct your comments to me and we'll work on sorting that out. And also, I'll mention it again at the end, but there's going to be other opportunities as well. We know that this is a lot to digest. Simply, you've seen a bunch of numbers on a screen, you have a handout, you're going to go home, read it, have questions. That's perfectly understandable. Before the next council meeting on May 6th, starting at 5:30, there's going to be a public hearing. And at that public hearing, there won't be another presentation, but you'll have the opportunity to speak to council then. And you also have the opportunity between now and then, if you submit something in writing to the village office, it'll be read out during that session. So if you aren't able to actually make it, you could submit something in writing with your name and information, and we can still make sure that your voice is heard in that way. So without going too much, because I can always talk forever, if there's anybody that has any questions, I encourage you to come and stand up at the microphone and fire away. And not everyone at once. So I'm seeing no questions. Nothing at all? That's fair. Yeah, it works out to an average of, I think, 10.44% is what it worked out to be on average, because it's a combination of assessment and it wasn't an increase to the mill rate per se. It was just simply the assessment change for business, which if you average it out across all the businesses in the community, it works out to, I think, 10.44% is what was calculated. But essentially what that'll mean for a business owner like yourself that wants to know an idea of what your business taxes would be, if you look at your assessment rate that you would have received at the beginning of January and take that percentage and increase your last year's tax assessment by that number, it will get you the amount for business. It was just the assessment increase that council has in the first draft. Yeah, if you could come up and speak into the microphone. I would ask, because there are people online, it is being recorded. If you have comments, please come up. I ask that you come up to the microphone if you have further comments. Otherwise, I'll see if there's anybody else that has any points that want to say. Thank you. I would ask that you come to the microphone. Thanks. Are there any other comments, questions? So I'm hearing none. So before closing, again, want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and want to take a moment again to state that this isn't your only opportunity to voice concerns and ask questions. Like I said, for the May 6th council meeting, before the official council meeting, there's going to be a public hearing at 5:30 where you'll be able to voice your concerns to council. You can do so in writing in advance. You can drop off something in writing to us at the village office anytime up to noon on May 6th for that public hearing, and or come in person. You're welcome to come in person as well. And just to make sure I haven't forgotten everything, or forgotten anything, not everything. I tend to forget everything. So I'm just going to call for three times to see if there's any final comments. So for the first time, is there anybody that wants to make a representation to be recorded in the minutes? Hearing none. For the second time, is there anybody that wants to make a comment or presentation to be recorded in the minutes? Hearing none. For the third and final time, is there anyone who wishes to make a representation? Hearing none. So there being no people speaking, thank you very much, and I declare this hearing closed.